Well, welcome back to another Photo Fridays, and this week I am about, I don't know, quarter of a mile away from where we shot last week, i.e. very local again. Really enjoying shooting local, and as I said last week, it's just a fabulous habit to get into because you can obviously just pop out as and when. So it's a couple of hours before sunset, and I've come down to a little area that I have kind of jokingly dubbed Wee Elgol. Now, I'm sure you've heard of Elgol. Interesting fact, or maybe not so interesting, I've never been. Now, why do I call this Wee Elgol? Well, firstly, it might not be anything like it because of course I've never been there, but just all of the sort of textures and shapes and sort of how the rocks look, it just reminds me of some of the images that I've seen from Elgol, so I like to call this Wee Elgol, and of course us Irish like to use the term wee a lot. It's about 3 hours before high tide. It's not going to be a hugely high tide, probably up to where my feet are, but I say it's about 2 hours to sunset, so hopefully we'll get a little bit of sort of crossover between a little bit of colour and maybe those waves coming in just that little bit more, just to offer a little bit of interest in the foreground. But given the fact that the tide is still quite a bit out, that affords me two opportunities. Number one, to maybe get out onto the rocks and actually shoot a little bit sort of out here where the waves are sort of gathering, and two, because I am 2 hours away from sunset, I'm going to have a good mooch around first of all and see whether there's anything sort of that catches my eye, apart from maybe some of the obvious scenes that I've maybe scouted out before. So let's first of all go for a little bit of a dander and we'll see what we can see. So we got a lovely little bit of light coming through now. Now, sort of the angle of the sun this time of year, we won't have that direct sunlight for long, so what we'll be hoping for is actually some reflected light. But for now, that's why I've sort of raised myself up, because just the lovely colour on these rocks here, just love how it kind of just illuminates that low angle of the sun. Playing about a bit with just how the sort of waves are sort of washing in around the rocks. It's not a huge swell, but every sort of few sets you get a bigger wave. And then what I think sort of helps to anchor the image a little bit and maybe not let your eye completely drift off the frame is leaving that top rock in, which again is giving some of that nice light. Now, you heard me talking about the skerries last time we were out. That's the skerries over here, and we actually have some sort of sea mist going about, and it's actually creating a really nice atmosphere out there, so I may be able to start using those in a moment as well. But for now I think I'll carry on sort of looking at this little area here, because this is what's picking up the sun, and we've got to make the most of that before it disappears behind some buildings. This first image ultimately I don't think works. A couple of reasons behind that. Firstly, this is actually a crop. This wave kind of flows on out past the screen here, and it was quite overexposed. So cropping in to get rid of a lot of that has got me very tight to the rock here. So I think that kind of is ultimately one of the failings. Secondly, this sort of area here, just a little bit of white nothingness going on, no real texture being held. Perhaps an overexposed area here as well. I do like how the waves are flowing over this particular rock and this particular rock, but I think that really this is just a nothing image really. Kind of insight. So these are just a selection of some of the images that I took there, and again just to show the difference that timing can make. You can see that here, for example, there's just no waves coming over the rock whatsoever, versus perhaps these two where there's a lot of waves coming over the rock. So again, just that sort of whole aspect of timing when you're at the coast, and of course paying attention to what's going on across the whole frame, because while your eye is perhaps drawn here and here, you're still paying attention to what's going on in the background. Not a lot going on here, maybe a little bit too much going on here, so just a little bit of comparison on this particular subject. These images taken 17 seconds apart, and you can see the difference that light is actually making. So in this first one we still have a little bit of that direct sunlight on this foreground rock, and obviously on the two rocks here. But if you look here, say 17 seconds later, and you can already perhaps see it starting to disappear from the bottom of this rock, but definitely from this rock here. So even just little subtle changes like that, it's good to be aware of when you're out in the field. Right, back to the video. So still up in the same position, but what I've done now is the light, even though it's quite subdued, the mist is kind of just making sort of wide vista shots not really possible at the moment. So what I've done is I've narrowed my view even more now. I've got the 18 to 135 and I'm right out at 135 now. And just again, it's my eye drawn to the reflection of the light against the rock, and actually secondary what my eye was drawn to, just in behind that rock, the way the waves were flowing. And again, that's a useful thing just to bear in mind. You know, just setting your camera up and simply just shoot with all the waves. Actually have a look and see where those waves are flowing and what potentially is going to make some interesting patterns. And I really do like just kind of now just how that wave is just sort of flowing over the top of the stone. So playing a little bit about with that. There's still some of that nice direct light on those stones, and I think it's going to go any minute now. So again, just an example of some of the sort of images and crop choices that I made standing in this particular area. As I said, it was this little, obviously the light against the rock, but it was actually this little area of waves that was sort of really drawing my eye to it, but I just couldn't quite get it to work. You can see here that I tried a 16:9 crop just to have that rock. I liked how this was flowing, but again, just as it was kind of splashing back on itself, it was just creating I think a bit of a distraction. I think what possibly came closest was maybe a vertical composition, just allowing myself to sort of see the sort of two rocks sort of leading up to the main rock. So that's kind of what I think I sort of settled on. But again, I'm sort of 50-50 whether it works or not, but I'll throw that up now and then we'll get on with the rest of the video. So still in the same spot, and that's probably something that you'll get used to if you follow my YouTube channel. I don't like to move around and jump around too much, so again, while there is some beautiful light on the skerries, we're not getting a huge amount in large parts of the foreground, so I'm still just working on those little abstract images. And now what I'm doing is I'm working again on this just little crop of rocks and seeing how the sort of waves flow through. Now again, with using a polarizer and a 4-stop NZ, it is just all about timing. And again, as I've said before, you know, your choice whether you like it really sort of flowing over the rocks, whether you want it really sort of super smooth, or whether you want to sort of leave a little bit of the texture in the image. Now for me personally, I'm looking to leave a little bit of that rock showing, because of course it is still picking up some reflected light. It is really about that timing aspect. But 1.5 seconds seems to be getting me close to it, but if I were to shoot now, it's probably a little bit too many waves, and if I were to shoot now, it's probably not enough. So it's somewhere in between. Again, if I were to shoot here, just too much. So I'm probably looking to shoot about now, 1.5 seconds. Because you do want a little bit of that movement in the water over the top of the rocks, but you want those rocks to sort of shine through, and for that to happen, you want them not to be covered by the water for at least a portion of that image. So thank goodness for digital and we're not firing off film every time. So now the other thing that you could potentially do if you're getting frustrated with getting all of the right elements looking good in the same frame, you could actually take multiple images and then back in post, using something like Photoshop and layers, paint in the most appropriate parts of the image. Now of course you've got to be careful there that you don't make it look sort of completely false, but there is the opportunity maybe to paint in some more interest from a different frame over a secondary frame, so I may even give that a go. And again, just another example of some of the different images that can be produced from the same spot based upon the timing of the waves. There was a couple of things that I was kind of looking for. I really wanted, obviously, some nice colour on these foreground rocks, so I didn't want them covered. I didn't want the foreground rocks covered as here and here. I was also very keen to see what shapes I could see on this background rock. You can see even in some of them the background rock completely disappears. I definitely wanted that background rock in there, but I didn't want it too bold in the frame. I kind of wanted something flowing around. So from this sort of selection, I was then able to narrow something down to what I thought perhaps worked in this particular instance. Right, look at that, I've actually moved position. So I've come down now to the shore where the tide's actually coming in now. High tide isn't for another 2 hours, and as I said, it's compared to this time last week, it's actually a relatively low high tide. Low high tide? Got the camera set up in a vertical composition, and again, kind of using a little bit of both sides of the stone to kind of guide the eye through, but actually what's really going to guide the eye through is one of those larger sets of waves. Now, I'm going to say it's probably not going to work this evening. We are actually starting to lose, I'm not sure if you can make that out, but we're really starting to lose any light over on the Skerries. So there must be a sort of thicker bank of cloud on the horizon. It's about half an hour to the sunset now. Might still pop, of course. And we do have some nice textured clouds above us, so if anything is going to catch, you know, be lovely where the clouds are at the moment. Just going to play a little bit about with the composition in the hope that we do get some light, and if we don't, we don't. You know what? It's not too bad. Subtle. A couple of parts of the image that I really like. Obviously, watching how the waves are kind of playing around in the centre, and again, if you can just sort of watch those waves, you can sort of have an idea of the sort of patterns they're going to make. There's actually another part of the image that I really like. Let me show you. So it's actually just here in the foreground. Not sure whether you can see that there. I'll put a little image up off the stones. And just as those stones are, as the water's kind of just finally sort of slipping away over those stones, they're actually giving a really lovely sort of silvery, steely sort of look to them. So actually, here comes a reasonable wave now. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So I'm just going to let that flow in, flow in, flow in. And I'm going to shoot now. And I'm going to take another one. Probably that first one's probably going to be the one out of those two, but we'll take a quick look. Yeah, so that's quite nice. Just a nice image, I guess. Nothing to majorly write home about, but yeah, just a little bit of sort of subtle light. And actually, there's a couple of sort of brighter spots on those rocks again that again is just giving that sort of silvery sort of, you know, even though we're not post-sunset yet, just giving almost that sort of post-sunset bluey, steely, purpley colour. Here comes another potential wave, so we'll watch this one go. So that one decided to knock my tripod, so back to square one, trying to figure out the composition again. Well, you probably guessed it, but I think that's the light gone. Didn't really, as I thought, it didn't really sort of happen down here. And there was some nice, sort of, as I said, some silvery sort of blue tones, but as luck would have it, and again, one of the benefits of shooting local, I was here last week, and we did actually get some lovely purples and pinks in the sky, and I'll actually throw up a couple of those images as well. So sunset is in about 10 minutes. Pretty sure nothing's really going on. There's a little bit of colour, especially over to the west. Now I'm going to be sort of walking that way. If it just so happens that there's anything to be shot on the way back, maybe I'll break out the camera again, but I don't think that's going to happen. So once again, thanks a lot for following along and for watching another Photo Fridays. I'm off to have fish and chips tonight. Woo! Oh, and by the way, look, new jacket. Instagram! Oh, so that'll be a no then. A little bit misty out there. Anyway guys, once again, thanks for watching. We'll catch up again next week. Bye bye. Fish and chips. So again, this is the image, and I think it works reasonably well. The light perhaps not as nice as I would have liked it, but as I said, I really like how that sort of outflow of tide is just creating this sort of silvery, sort of misty effect over the tops of those stones. And then of course we still have just a little touch of light on these rocks. The other thing that I quite like is, and I must admit I didn't notice this in the field, only when I came back, there's almost a little sort of bank of clouds here that's perhaps mimicking the skerries in the distance. Yeah, so it's a reasonably pleasing image. I quite like the composition. I quite like how there is a little bit of separation between this rock and the skerries, and how this foreground rock sort of dips down to reveal this one. In an ideal world, I would perhaps have a little bit more separation in here, and that's perhaps something to go back and work on, but ultimately a reasonably pleasing image, I guess. Just as a little side note, just an example of how white balance can kind of affect the mood of an image. So this is how that image was shot in camera, and then of course just in post-processing, because I shot it as a raw file, this is just some of the settings that you can apply in Lightroom Auto, daylight, cloudy and shade, and that can sometimes help you get closer to the mood that you're looking to achieve. Anyway guys, so I will leave you with one final image, and that is the image actually that I shot last week, where I think that the light actually worked much better. I still think there's some work to be done on the composition, but again, shooting local means that of course I can head on up there at short notice and try again. Once again, thanks for watching, and we'll catch up again next week. Bye bye.